So the IC3 Institute Student Quest survey this is the 4th year of the survey. And it was actually started when COVID had hit, because we wanted to study whether COVID will impact higher education and post-secondary plans. It was simple, it was a short survey, some 2,000 kids took it, all in India. Cut to 2023 in its 4th release. The survey became a multi-pronged survey, which means that includes surveys not only with the student, but with additional stakeholders. So we surveyed parents for the first time, as well as counselors. So some of you in the room may have done the survey. And why is it that we have moved to a multi-pronged survey since last year? So last year we surveyed students, counselors, and unis. This year we did parents. The idea of doing a survey is to reach a practice of counseling, whether it is on the university side or on the school side, which is data-driven, which is research-based, and which allows you to meet the needs of the students in a more objective manner, right? So you have data to sort of help drive some points, and also for you to know what could be. So some of what we're going to share, the findings, some of them may be relevant to you in your region, some may not be. Some may be relevant for everyone, and some may not be relevant for anyone, right? This is the only initiative of the IC3 Institute which involves students. So that's a little bit of the survey. And each year we've built, so for example, from last year's survey, when we asked students, who impacts and influences your choice the most? Guess what they said? Peers? Parents? Yeah, parents came up as the most influencing agent in their choices, right? So we said, okay, now is the time to survey parents. So what we've been doing is we've been building on the findings of each year and then curating the next year. So our intent for next year is to do a survey on how many of them are using AI and how are they using AI, and do that between schools and universities. So that's to collect data, to understand, analyze, and communicate it. And I've told you that it's in 4 years. This is the growth of the survey population. So we had in 2020, we had 2,000 plus students take it with 2 countries. To now, this year, we had 12,347 responses to the, so about 8,000 plus for the school survey and remaining for the parent and the school counselors, and across 98 countries. Sure.
Good afternoon. Sorry, this was my slide and I'm still poking my nose into Amrita's work, but this requires a recognition. This requires major recognition for Amrita and her team. The reason is the sample size that just might look as a little bit of skyscrapers here, but honestly speaking, getting a survey done from 12,000 respondents is a nightmare. For all those who have been doing PhDs or who have done PhDs and they know about research statistics, and those who know about the sample size and the population size correlation. If your population size is 1 million people, a sample you need to check in a legit PhD survey is 300 to 500 people. Look at now this number in that context. It's not a skyscraper, it's a giant, it's a Burj Khalifa of the skyscrapers. So
thank you.
That requires a recognition on Amrita's part.
No, and,
thank you so much.
And of course, I forgot to miss Pavak. Yeah. So what we've done is to be able to make our research as objective and as meaningful as possible. We've started partnering with universities, and Pavak represents University of Waterloo, are our partners for the survey this year. So we get intellectual capital from there on the survey, and Kritika Padore is not here. Vijay Bhumi is the other university. So we try to partner with universities from different regions in the survey, in constructing the survey, disseminating the survey, and of course, then doing the analysis, right? So I do want to recognize Waterloo and Vijay Bhumi as partners for the survey for this year. So the key focus area for 2023 was education beyond high school. How are they making choices for tertiary students making choices for tertiary educations? And how are making choices and then final decisions? What is the influence of parents, social media, other external sources? And everyone seems to be, all kids and parents seem to be talking about profile building. So what's the buzz around profile building? And also then every kid, wants to make an app or start a community service project, which no one has ever done before, right? So what's this whole impetus on entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial thinking and boot camps one after the other that's happening through universities and schools, and what is that really creating, right? So the impetus on entrepreneurship. What's the parents' influence? So that was the parents' survey. We asked both the kind of influence and how ready do they feel and what do they feel about this process, right? As a parent of a 14-year-old or a 10-year-old or a 16-year-old. And then you have impact of counseling, which is the core of all of our work. So if a child has access to counseling, how does it impact their decision making? Yeah, so these were some of the core areas. And Pavak is going to go through the demographics. So
Okay, so this survey makes me feel really nervous and makes me feel really small and makes me feel really very, unprepared because the size of the survey was not a size of my PhD. So I'm not trying to undermine my PhD. I mean, the amount of the survey that has gone through. I mean, how many of us even open our emails and reread it? For me, most of my emails, if I've seen on my mobile phone, they're gone forever. I mean, I never go back on my computer and see that. And in that kind of an environment where our attention span is going down, we have been reaching out to hundreds and thousands of people and making sure they fill up the survey, which requires about 30 minutes. So it's a mammoth task. And the team of IC3 Institute was primarily responsible for this. I and my other colleague who's not here today, Kritika, we were more of kind of providing inputs on the survey design and survey questions and what should be there and what is repetitive and what should be out and what is the language, but the execution part of it was carried on by Amrita's team. So the survey reached out to, and the survey has respondents from 98 countries of the globe, which you can see, which has a bunch of geographies covered from Canada to Australia and from I don't know what this country here is on the map, but my European friends will be able to tell you, to the deep South Africa. So we have covered almost all countries, all continents for sure. The survey has reached out to a number of people. And so the findings that you aggregate of those findings. So as Amrita said, you may relate to a lot, you may disagree or not relate to the few, and feel free if you have a point to make in between. I'm happy to if you interrupt me and raise your hand and we can talk about it. So survey reached out to 98 countries, about 8,300 students, 3,000 parents, and most importantly, about 800 educators and guidance counselors who were a part of it. In terms of who are the students, did we ask the kindergartens? No. The survey was asked to, most of them were grade 11, 12, while recognizing that by grade 11 and 12, a lot of students do make a mental decision. They are wedded to a country or a career or what. So, we all also went down a couple of years because nowadays, and we'll talk about it when the whole decision making about going in a university starts. So we also had about 30% students from grade 10 and another 30% from grade 9. So grade 9 and 10, 30%, and the remainder 40% were grade 11 and 12 students. I can do that if you don't mind, yeah. We also looked at a parents' age profile, because parents' age profile also matters the risk-taking ability of sending children to a foreign nation, foreign country, and an unknown territory, into a different part of the world. So again, it's again a very cultural thing. So in some areas you will have parents have more children, so their age might be more, while in some areas they might have, I mean, typically India and China, it's 1 or 2 child policy informally. So you might have the parents' age a little lower. So you will see the most parents were in the range of 30 to 50 years, which is a big thing. 2 decades I'm covering in one line. And then 50 to 59 and 60 to 60 above are also pretty large size. So in fact, there's also an entire spectrum of parents, students and parents. We covered at all the spectrums, tried to do a very holistic research here. We also looked at the experience distribution of guidance counselors, because you would have met here guidance counselors who are very senior, very experienced guidance counselor, been into this field for over 5 years or 10 years, while there are a very new, I mean, think about yesterday's graduation ceremony of IC3 Institute. Over 300 people got their degrees, and there are a number of people who are virtually there. So, you know, the fresher, I would say, as a guidance counselor, and the experienced guidance counselor, we had a pretty good mix, or even mix, of all of those people representing the guidance counselors as well.
So here's an interesting thing which you see at the bottom of the slide, that when we asked later, you know, parents and students, what do you value in a counselor? So experience came up in the top 3. Now, what was the limitation of the study was, is experience defined in terms of number of years or amount of exposure? So that's been a clear limitation of the study, but the fact that experience is a very high priority for parents and students did come through in the study, right? Moving on to the findings. So that was just for some context setting, and moving to the factors that, you know, findings. So this is our the student survey. We asked the students that, how do you, when you start thinking about what to do next, do you think about a career? Do you think about a course or a major? Do you think about a college, or do you think about a study destination, a country? So essentially 4 C's. And of course, what came up was that they first think about a career, which means that they're actually anchoring themselves onto something and then planning backwards, because it's clearly following that sequence, right? So you have career, and then they're trying to think about a course, and then they're trying to think about a college, and then right? So it's clearly following the sequence which we have been for decades. The question here is this the best approach in today's time? Because careers are not, or undergraduate programs do not link to careers as linearly as they did earlier, right? So but for a child, so what happens is, like, most children will say, okay, I want to become a psychologist, or I want to become an engineer, or I want to become a teacher. So I should think about doing this course. These are some of the colleges I know, and this is the country that I could go to. There's a sense of certainty when they're progressing on this path, rather than saying, okay, I love history, and as I go along, I'll see what opportunities it opens for me, right? So it's that, and it's a message for us as universities or counselors to also encourage this thought of thinking that, okay, maybe I love history, and I can think about things will evolve, and more pathways will come across, or you will get to know more opportunities. So that's a discussion point here. And the other is also that in today's time of AI, which is disrupting, challenging, and changing careers at such a faster pace, if a kid decides in grade 10, I want to be an engineer, just for the sake of an example, which he will become after 8 years, 10 years, would be a lucrative or an interesting option then, right? So these are some of the, so it's something that we've all sort of an approach that most of us see in kids, that most of us ourselves have followed. And there is an element of certainty which we all love and children love. And maybe it's required for children because they can't deal with so much ambiguity at that age, right? So it's easier to deal with a certain plan, but it's also a cue for all of us in the, as adults in the situation with, as counselors or universities, to talk about just subjects I love and what are the possibilities, and break the linear thinking between undergraduate programs and its outcomes. Then we ask them, okay, what are the factors? So you think about a career. Now, when you think about a career, what are the factors that you think about in a career to zero that down? So, of course, we had the remuneration. They all want to make quick bucks nowadays, right? So you had that come up as the number one factor, which is 31.74, which is a significant influence. Then you had alignment with personal values. This is extremely interesting because you'll see a lot of kids saying that they want to be associated with a cause. A lot of them do, right? So the alignment with personal values was like a very interesting thing that came up. I mean, I don't know if it would have come up 20 years, if we would have done this 20 years ago, right? Social prestige of the career is not so the money and the alignment with the personal values, but still in the top 4 factors. And the longevity of the career. I'm sure you must be having parents or students asking you, tell me a career that AI is not going to take over. Okay, so clearly they're thinking about the potential threat. There is fear, and those conversations are, and the survey just that brings that out. And that is your slide.
Yeah, one more observation if you see here, and sorry, I'm going back for a minute. If you see the social prestige of a career, most of the people say there is no really influence. I mean, once upon a time, I remember while I was a kid, I was told is like, be a doctor, because that is kind of the top, you are respected well in the society. With this whole influence of social media and the changing times, what society looks at is not important. What I like is more important. What I want to do is more important. How long my career is gonna last is more important. So these are the changing trends. I mean, for me, that was pretty eye-opening. Yes, ma'am, please.
Beginning, we kind of saw how parents influence what career choices the children make. And I completely agree with the previous slide, where in today's world, most of the children, social status of a career doesn't matter to them. But at least from my personal experience, parents still engineering, medical, and law are the preferred choice of careers. So how does this data correlate to, like, because at the end of the day, they are a major stakeholder or a role player in career choice.
I agree. So I'm not saying it has no influence. If you go back and see, it is no influence for only 30% of the people. So about 70 or 65% of people still, as you said, and which is, I mean, in this context, it is large number. So I totally, don't disagree with you, but the new generation is coming out of that seed and is now a plant, and one day it will become. So where the matter of social prestige doesn't matter. I want to do something that I like, that is fulfilling, matters. Okay.
1 minute, Pavak. I also want to clarify another limitation of the survey is here when we're talking about this. We haven't bifurcated data to say that this came from a school that has which is affluent, versus this came from a school that has middle, so somewhere maybe remuneration is more important, and some kids can have nothing to do. I don't care, they don't. So they, all that socioeconomic bifurcation has not been done. So I think that I wanted to clarify that as well. It's going to come up. So we don't. So also this is just a sneak peek into the report. We do have copies of the full report. All the reports are also available on the IC3 Institute website. So you can look at more information there. But over to you.
Yeah. What was I most interested in? I'm a university guy, so I was more interested, and to my friends with all the red badges here is like, what are the factors affecting the decision to shortlist a particular university or a group of universities? And it had a little bit of things that we had a hunch. at some of the striking new things as well. So one is, of course, course and program details matter the most. I had a hunch about people will talk about scholarship. I mean, I will go to a university that gives me more scholarship and engineering. I don't care about, the reputation and this and that and the brand image and all that stuff. But I mean, course and academic program details. Who gives me more flexibility? Who gives me more majors? Who gives me more minors? Those are the kind of parameters that students look at. So academic and program details, potential job opportunities. Jobs are going to be the key thing because, the education, whether it is in India or abroad, is becoming expensive day by day. So, the return on investment or job opportunity where they'll be able to recover the money invested was the second thing. The most striking thing was the third, which is safety. I mean, for a lot of universities abroad, safety was a kind of a given thing. But I'm being a Canadian now, a lot of people are still asking, and I have now started asking is like, how safe is Canada? Or how safe is United States? We are looking at this gun culture happening into certain countries, the road rage is happening into the West. So West was looked at as a destination to be the safest destination, and safety was top 3 or top 5 concern, which is now coming up. And also, I mean, I can put up from the Canadian viewpoint. I know, COVID became a big safety concern, which the bigger campuses or the closed campuses, how did we work in COVID were the key thing about COVID. Interestingly, what I see is the gender neutrality of a campus is also becoming. So increasingly, the Western universities, especially, I mean, most universities are now talking about becoming a neutral university. We really do care about very inclusive culture. So not only boys and girls, but we also talk about the LGBTQ plus communities and how safe they are in our communities, in our universities, are becoming a key factor. And of course, then the remainder being the recognition or the ranking. Again, that's kind of, that used to be the top one, which is like getting a slightly downer here. Affordability, a scholarship, and a bunch of them are there. You can, I mean, I'm not going for each things because otherwise she'll have to provide us a dinner. So I'm not getting into that.
Pavak, I just want to also point out here. So one, the definition of safety has become wider. It's not just, am I physically safe? The scope of safety has expanded to how safe do I feel psychologically? How supported do I feel? So that's also safety. And another very interesting thing is that it's become more important than ranking and recognition. So what we do in the survey is, because it's an annual survey, there are some questions that we repeat in every survey just to see whether that is changing. There's a shift there. So ranking was in the top 3 in 2021, and it has moved to number 4, 5, and 6 over the last 2 years.
Yeah,
so 2023, it's not featured in the top 3, right? So again, something that probably is COVID's blessing. I don't know.
COVID's blessing also. I mean, people are doing a better research on universities. So I'm often asked, why is Waterloo not number one in Canada? And I said, we are not a holistic university. We don't have a medical school. We don't have a law school. We can never be number one. So think about where you want to be and look at that particular field. Then look at blindly copying the university rankings. There are hundreds and thousands of ranking nowadays available, and little ironically, one university is ranked on a different ranking number, while the same university ranking thing, evaluates that other. So rankings are becoming less and less important. Also, a bunch of new universities in India are not eligible to enroll for a ranking system. For NAC, for example, you need to be into 5 years, but then they do some amazing work from the very first year, and we have a few universities here. So these are a lot of things that are now becoming pretty interesting. The study destination, again, a little bit of my interest being a foreign university operating in India and across the world is like, does the study destination matter? And if you see here, you know, we are at almost at number 3. So study destination doesn't really matter. These are the number of students who apply to one country, one universities, one country, 2 countries, or 3 countries. So they look at a career, then they choose a country. Not they choose a country first and then find a university where I want to go. I mean, once upon a time, I know, I'm from that generation where a lot of my friends would say, I want to go to United States, do or die, do anything. Any university doesn't matter, but I want to get into United States. That is gone now. You know, people are looking at career and they're looking at multiple countries. I'll apply for the career I like, whichever university or whichever country that is. I mean, these are my top 3. I'll go to Canada, I'll go to US, I'll go to, Australia. And then, but the right place is more important for them. So they apply to multiple countries. It's the country craze has gone.
So here it's what's interesting on that slide is, so the red bars indicate students who wish to apply outside of the country. You clearly see like 40% of them know that they will be applying to 3 destinations. The yellow bars represent the students who said, we want to stay back in our country. So we want to continue studying in our home country. And 32%, so the majority haven't decided regions in the country. This is really interesting and, you know, something for us as counselors to think about, because if you look at India, for example, even within India, there is a huge regional difference between north, south, east, west. But children, when they want to stay back in the country, don't think about regions as seriously as or as compared to students who want to go outside of the country. So the whole emphasis on, you know, location doesn't kick in for students who are applying, who are thinking of applying or staying back in the country, which poses a couple of challenges. One, they may not think about they may not know about admissions policies, etc. In other regions. They may not know there's a huge, they may not understand, or they're undermining cultural differences within regions of one country and how adjustment could be an issue. Okay, I can probably not, I shouldn't say this on camera, but yeah, there are some cities in the country which are, for example, a dry state, right? When students go to college, it's important, yeah, for them to socialize. Now, does that come in their way of thinking? No, does not come in the way of thinking. Is that something they should think about, not think about, you know, and stuff like that? Or some regions are culturally richer. So should they be studying art there? Just, I mean, I'm taking very stereotypical examples, but just because I'm bringing that up because want to stay back in the country and not thinking about options. And therefore, it affects their college planning. They may not for, let's say, entrance examinations or competitive examinations of those regions. And it just doesn't, it comes in the way of optimizing their application process, right? Domicile is an issue, you know, so reservations for a specific region, etc. All of that kicks in if they're not thinking about this earlier enough.
I'll just start. I mean, I'm seeing we are at 50% of our slides and we are almost having a time. So I'm just becoming a little faster. Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, you want to talk about this one?
Yeah. So, Samir, to your point, I think you probably wanted to know the gender distribution. That's in the report. It's almost equal, if I remember. But we asked students, does your gender influence the choices that you make? And of course, 75% of them said no. So there could be 2 reasons. Either it's social desirability bias. I don't want to say that, yes, it, you know, on a survey. Or it is that they're genuinely oblivious or do not correlate the 2, right? Whereas if you move on to the next slide, you'll see that when we asked the same question to influence of gender on students' decision-making as per counselors, significant influence reported by 27% of counselors, and parents, almost 38% of the parents said it does influence. So this is where we speak about parents maybe of another generation and may think that, you know, there may be some careers which may be more suitable for or may correlate that, right? So that's an interesting fact that came up. And the last impact of gender that we saw was also that students had more boys taking up science-focused subjects, and that was sort of reinforcing the gender stereotypes that exist. Counselor to student interaction frequency. I hate to say that 51.2% of the kids have not met their counselor. The only good news is it's better than last year. Last year, this was 55%. Yeah. So, okay, but something for us to think about as schools, because are we only attending to kids who are coming into our office or otherwise as well? So this was just a comparison of, but the majority for those who've met are saying that we prefer to meet on a need-on-need basis, not on a monthly or a once in 3 months kind of basis. Counselor and parent interaction, again, a huge number, 38.88 have not met the counselor yet. And again, the preference of frequency is need-to-need base.
I think that is a very significant thing for all my school administrator friends. Is like, I mean, meeting parents is very important because, as we said, they still influence the decision, and meeting. I mean, there has been a parents teachers meeting, but there is not a parent counselor meeting happening in the school, which is a school administrators as a guidance counselor. We need to talk to our managers. Our principal is like, there has to be a parent counselor meeting concept also. If you are overwhelmed at least once in a quarter, that's a very important stuff. Yeah.
Okay. We asked parents. The good news is the kids who've met the counselors, about, I don't remember the percentage, but it's either 65 or 70% of them gave a satisfaction rating of 7 and above on a scale of 1 to 10. So those who are going are finding it useful, and you'll see more of that in the report. The areas in which students find the counselor support useful is in analyzing personal strengths and weaknesses, in shortlisting universities and courses, and in profile building. So it does come up. And the areas which parents find support of counselors really useful is, again, understanding the child's strengths and weaknesses, mentorship, and maybe mentorship is also linked to, therefore, the experience that they're talking about, and again, profile building, right? So those are so you see that the expectation of the parents and the students clearly sort of match there. That's yours, Power.
Okay, so initiating conversation between students and parents, and I mean, this is a very important point. So at what stage you start talking about careers to the children, and and when does it? Believe me, I mean, the number and the impact also at a later stage doesn't have much. A lot of things starts nowadays at a very early age. So about 12 to 14 years old, you will find, is the actual age at which the counseling starts, and appropriate age for first conversations. I'll just give an example of myself here. I mean, my son studies in a grade 9, and he'll be now entering grade 10. And typically at his age, his school wants him to see his guidance counselor at least 3 times a year, or maybe 2 semester at times, because they have so many questions. And as parent, I'm outdated on the IB system and the way in which students teach, way in which student learns. So it was my student, because my son, who found out meeting a guidance counselor is there is an IB which is new, a business certificate, and I want to do something more. So I will take summer courses extra, my guidance counselor told me. And these things happen, if this happen at an early age, will have a great impact, because guidance counselors are the people who are able to guide a child based on their needs at a very early age. I mean, the early you start, the impactful it is. The later you start, it's not going to have a major impact. So starting the guidance counseling sessions and guidance meetings earlier really helps, and which is happening in most schools nowadays.
Okay, so this is the level of awareness of parents. So college options in the region, they're significantly aware. College options outside of the region, not so aware. New and evolving career options. This is really interesting because if you see their awareness drops by 18% as compared to college options, right? But the students want to prioritize courses. And here parents don't know about courses or careers, right? So it's sort of a conflict there. And in the report, I don't know if we have it on the slides, but a lot of parents are very encouraging of non-traditional or new age careers. And they feel it's better than traditional careers. That's been reported by them on the study. However, they don't report knowing enough about it. So a cue for us as counselors to what workshops to do with parents, right? And then, of course, they don't know about, so the variety of courses offered by universities plus the new careers is something that they felt least aware about, yeah? So this is the impetus on entrepreneurship. So parents' openness to students and interning to gather entrepreneurial experience, 71% say, yes, we'd like to go ahead. Some very minor also said, 6% also say it could distract them from studies. Reasons for which students pick up entrepreneurial opportunities according to counselors was genuine interest in developing a venture, developing an entrepreneurial mindset, and of course, building a profile for university application. So when we got this, then we also asked them, how many of them continue their entrepreneurial ventures? So only 25% of the students who start an entrepreneurial initiative or venture actually continue to pursue it or maintain it, right? So obviously then that makes me think, is there really a genuine interest? Do they really want to develop a mindset, or was it college application? That's a cynical view of the whole this thing. The other thing could also be that maybe their academic interests change and the entrepreneurial initiative doesn't sort of align with that, or the workload at university increases and therefore makes them, renders them unable to sort of pursue that, right? This leaves us with some important questions, which is, what is the way, and this is where we want to open these questions to all of you. What is the way to bridge the gap in access to counseling support? Why is it that only about 52%, 51% of students are going to their counselor, right? How much and what nature of involvement is desirable from parents in the counseling process? We've heard conversations, we've all in a counseling community spoken about how parents can be interfering or pushy, or that they don't know. All three situations are as bad as the other, right? So what is desirable parent involvement in a counseling process? Where does the scope of building entrepreneurship thinking, inclination, and initiatives fall in the scope of, is it really in the scope and remit of counseling, right? Where does it lie? And how can universities and schools work better together to improve the quality of support for students? Yeah, so anyone has any ideas, has done something in their school or at their university, and would like to share, we'd love to hear from you.
Hi, I'm Srividya from Vibgyor Group of Schools. So this year we organize something called as Vibgyor Career Day, where we invite universities to our campus, and students get to interact with the representatives. We also have workshops, and this time what we did, typically we have the universities who are on the panel list, and they share the experience, offerings and all. This time we invited our own in-house parents, and we asked them to share their career trajectory. Okay, how did they take up the career? What are the challenges they faced? And what are the challenges they are facing currently in their job role? So that is something which worked very well. And, most of the parents and students could find it more interactive, and there are a lot of questions which they could ask and get clarity by interacting with their own, in-house with their own parents. So we did a lot of collaborative work with our parents so that they do understand the importance of counseling right at the, not necessarily at the high school level, but you can start right at the grade 6 level itself.
So Srividya, I have a question, follow-up. So in what way do you think that was helpful? So typically you're saying that there were a set of universities that would come in and talk about different careers or different programs.
Yes.
you continue to do that, but you also
Yes.
added by bringing in parents who
Right.
shared their career trajectory.
Right.
So can you tell me how that helped?
How it typically help, because
So first thing you've already mentioned is that it made parents more aware of the need for counseling.
yes.
Yeah. Anything else that comes to your mind which is making you think that that was a successful initiative?
There are many parents who switched. Maybe they did necessarily the bachelor's in engineering, a mainstream career option, and they did mention that they were strongly influenced by their own parents or relatives. And how did they understand the dynamics of the career and how they switched over from one field to other field, and how it's important for parents to understand the no doubt you may be given the right kind of values to a child to navigate through the options or decide what your right career fit is. But yes, understanding the personality dynamics of your child is very, very important. So that emphasis made a big role for our existing parents to understand that, your own, you as a can also become a career coach and, help your child, not necessary that you really need to go to a counselor.
Okay, thanks for sharing that. So when I did this back in school, I had the parents come back and say, oh, we don't know that you had parents, that kids ask these kind of questions. Because maybe the child they have back at home will not have all the same questions in the room. So it exposed them to a sort of a plethora of questions that, come. So, and what are the different types of questions that come from, and also, from students, and also the fact that their child is interacting with all of these students, right? So it could become their question one day, or it may have been their question earlier, right? So it made them go back little more prepared and willing to collaborate, right? So I think that was a big like I didn't realize, because when the parents said, oh my God, these are the questions that you deal with, so that was very interesting for us to sort of, realize. Yes, Amrita.
Okay. Oh, yes. One keeps forgetting that there's one of its own kind of conference where the hybrid still exists. So I think there are a couple of designs which I've used in my practice in the present school also. I work with Shivnada School, Gurgaon. But I think one of the first conversation parents are a very critical stakeholder in decision-making process, is the most influential probably stakeholder in the whole entire decision-making process. So I think in the beginning, talking to parent about the social preparedness, emotional preparedness, and financial preparedness, to look into their accounts, do they even have money? Because sometimes parents keep pushing children, Acha, you prepare, once you reach there, we will see what happens. If you get scholarship, then we'll send you. So I think how to navigate that question with parents upfront when you start the process. It saves you a lot of hassles. Sometimes parents have, in my practice, have taken it as an offense also. Then how can you ask this question? But say it is a reality question. If you've not financially prepared for it, if you're not going to go back and look at your accounts, it's not going to go anywhere. I'm wasting my time. Child is wasting their own aspirations. That's one part. Second,
And
anything
favorite there is, Samir, if they get into an Ivy League, we will sell our house.
we'll sell our house.
So that's the other thing that you also.
I mean, sorry, some university partners are here. I generally see the child's competence and all also, and I sometimes genuinely recommend, do not take loans at undergraduate degree. You need more loans for master's degree. Do not take loan. Because you see at that point of time, the child may even struggle. You're not as a counselor, even though the child succeed in a very competitive environment. So you don't want to set child and a parent for a failure. So I generally recommend that. I mean, that honest, sometimes they go. But the second point is entrepreneurship. Some things you have to weave into the curriculum as a design. The whole world is talking about resilience. The whole world is talking about, empathy, collaboration, communication. But does it even exist in the delivery of curriculum you're doing? And of course, while it is embedded in what we do every day, but we've taken up adaptive MIT, curriculum, wherein from grade 3 to 9, children profess in a different skill set. In grade 10th, which is the so-called high-stake examination, first board exams of the year, children form groups, identify a social problem, and with the intervention of the technology, they try to find the solution of the problem just 15 days prior to their board examination. So that's because we know how bad can they go with this design at grade 10th level. We get huge resistance from parents. immense amount of resistance from teachers saying, can we do it in 9th or can we do it in 11th? Where is the need to do it in grade 10th? But it's a part of the design for them to fail, experience success, and build it up from ground zero. So we've even had a kid who used that project to last year send $500,000 startup, with a simple idea in the school. So some have to go back and have internal leadership a conversation that how do I make entrepreneurship as a part of the design of the school, so that not the kid who's going to go to the US, not the kid who's going to go to the Canada or UK has a super curricula or the additional curriculum. Every kid experiences that in terms of access, and then they decide where do they stand. So these are 2 points I wanted to say.
Thanks, Amrita. I think what you also bring out is that should I care as a counselor of how many of them pursue it, right? We've got the stat, but should I care about it, or should I only focus on the skills that are required in the process, right? So a lot of times, I think in the whole counseling curriculum program or the way we report, we get upset with the outcomes, not necessarily with intangible gains in the process. So I'm going to move, if there isn't another response, yes.
Last question about university and school working together. So what we have done in our school is we often organize career fairs, but we have thought of organizing a reverse fair for the universities. So when we talk about LORs, when we talk about admissions in good colleges and all that, they just see their written material. They don't know the child well. So reverse fair, we showcase the work done by the children. So university go around the college, see what they have done, pick their students. I can work on this child. My college can take this admission. So they give opportunity. Live student is standing in front of you. You can talk to them. So that really helps. So it's not only that fancy report card which we are sending to university. We are sending a child who is capable. If you find that child has a spark, so you can take it. So that's the one thing we have added in the regular one. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing. And since we were talking about the influence of the parent, I actually want to mention something which is really interesting is that student reported having on a scale of 1 to 10 influence of about 6. They rated their influence as 6 on of 1 to 10. Whereas when we asked students how much do parents have an influence on you, that was 7. So they are fully cognizant of the fact that the money is coming from there, the decisions are coming from there. So it's not something like they're at loggerheads for.
I have one issue with money. I mean, I'm sorry to say, but Indians are the only community in the world. And when I say Indian, it is South Asian. So Bangladesh, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Nepal included are the only communities in the world where higher education is being financed by the parents. Everywhere in every other geography in the world, the higher education has to be financed by the student. While it is not possible in a lot of cases, parents have to take tremendous loans, and then it leads to a major debt trap for the parent. So I mean, Samir made it somewhere a point that parents should finance it, and you made it a point that ghar bech denge, but we will get you at the Ivy League. But that puts a tremendous stress on the family, even the siblings, and at times that leads to sibling rivalries, because my brother went to a Ivy League, my father sold a property. Now I am not that bright. Why is this happening? I mean, what is my problem? Why is the problem with me? So I mean, these are very nuanced questions, a very individual situation, but somewhere guidance counselors have a role to play. Telling parents is like, empower your child, make sure you find the right fit university. It's not only the Ivy League of the world, the right fit by means university and by the side of students.
Okay, so what we've got towards the end of the presentation is really recommendations for universities, for counselors, and for advisory bodies and government bodies. This is not an exhaustive list. You have a lot more in the report. So when we surveyed the counselor population, which is about the 800 counselors, 75% of them were also doing roles over and above counseling, right? Which means it further reduces the access to students and their families. And probably that's why only 51% of the students are getting to meet them, right? So there's again, so here's what we're saying to schools and counselors: clear planning for access and visibility of the counselors. Often you'll see the counselor is someone who's sitting in the office. Are the counselors a part of the parent-teacher meeting? Can we send, when we send out the PTM slot, can we also say include in that that the guidance counselor is also available from this time to this time? Is the career counselor also a part of the school assemblies or the school functions? I transitioned from a psychology teacher, and I was a class teacher, and then I was, of course, I was always on duty. My to an assembly once a year when the annual day or whatever happened, we had responsibilities. So parents knew you, right? When I moved to a counselor, I was in my office. I was never given duties for any programs in the school. I stopped going for school trips. That also happened because the school trips would happen around application deadline. So there was no way that one could go. But that sort of reduces your visibility to students and parents. So can we find ways in which, and I felt that I could advise the first two batches that I had taught much more confidently than those who I had to get to know in my office, right? You don't see class dynamics extra. So can you pair up with a class teacher, one class teacher every month, and just go in the morning attendance time and just see that class? So how are you increasing visibility of the counselor is critical, and access is something that the school has to think about in terms of freeing them up of other responsibilities. Articulating the roles and responsibilities of a counselor. So what does the counselor really do? Like sometimes kids would come and say, can you help me with my visa? That's not, in my school, that's not my remit, right? So what all does a counselor do, and where all can they help you with? Systemic involvement of parents in the counseling and decision-making process. So you've all had, situations where you've come to a certain point with a child, you know what major or what kind of programs the child wants to apply to what country, and then you have the parent come in and say, I'm not okay with this. And then you rework the whole thing. We've all had those things. So at what stage do you move from group counseling to individual counseling? Then in the sequence of your individual counseling, when do you ask the child that, hey, is your parent in agreement? How do you sort of check that? And how do you have access to the parent there? Build a list of verified and reliable sources of information for students and families to access. This is coming from the fact that in the report, when we said what are the sources of information or sources of influence, social media, pop culture, literature, all of that did come up, right? So we are saying those may be great, maybe great ways to think about what people do, what society is are those the best sources of identifying career aspirations? Maybe yes, maybe no. So adding additional verifiable resources. Actively work with universities to deepen intellectual engagements and maybe bring them in to do entrepreneurship workshops if that helps. For universities, invest in expanding outreach efforts beyond the local region, because you clearly saw parents were not aware of options outside of the region, but information about diverse programs and their varied outcomes. So that the kids know that after psychology, the only option is not counseling, or the only option is not clinical psychology. So breaking that linear relationship between courses and between programs and potential outcomes. So I've had universities who've come in, like I had Ashoka University come in and say, KPMG hired our philosophy major. And kids are sitting there and thinking like, what is a philosophy major going to do at KPMG? And then they showed that case study of what happened and why, right? So that was, that's what made kids realize that, okay, I don't have to necessarily only do science or do only business economics to work at a consultancy company, right? Integrate data points and insights of student life on campus. Very important, because what's happening is, if you see on the slides, maybe I could go back, when choosing a university, if the top thing is coming out to be potential job outcomes or job opportunities, right? So they're all thinking about the outcomes. They're not thinking about how the life on campus So if a kid is miserable, the potential outcome will not be he won't get the highest paying job or placement of the campus, right? So talking more about life on campus and hence encouraging a broader way of thinking about university beyond placements and rankings, right? So really bring that in. And
Yeah, so that is where the safety also comes into picture, right? That universities need to talk about how safe their campus is, how inclusive their campus is. I mean, brochures, all the marketing materials requires to address these issues on a very softer nuances of the campus safety is becoming extremely important. The campus inclusivity, diversity. I mean, I have been looking at a few universities brochures, and I would see all boys. I mean, my program is a math major and an engineering, and we specially mention a program called Women in Engineering, because I mean, engineering has forever been seen as a male-dominated profession, and we have to be more inclusive to have girl childs also take engineering. So and that has to be, being inclusive is a good thing also by visualizing, putting it on the photographs, making it on the website, making those as case studies, help parents and and the guidance counselor take a right decision for the university.
how many of you here in the university have had a child who's maybe participated in a society or a club or started an initiative at the university, which is not really linked to their major, and actually dropped the major or changed the major and pursued that? Yeah. Anyone in the, yeah, you've had people like that who are probably got in thinking about pursuing economics, started doing art or something like sculptor and art, and decided to drop economics and maybe
I can give you an example. I mean, because I'm in Hyderabad, I know this. Again, Waterloo is a computer science university. I mean, ranked top on computer science, and we had a student from India, Hyderabad, who was being told by her parents, and this is a girl child, and who was told by her parents, "Beta, tere ko to IIT mein hi jana hai." And the IIT coaching started from grade 6. The girl got into an IIT which she didn't want, and she got into Waterloo Computer Science. She took Waterloo Computer Science. When she came to Canada, she did her first semester, and she was like, "I don't want to do anything with engineering. I am a person of literature. I would love to do something in literature." And she started her own blog. I mean, she moved from the top ranking faculty, from a top ranking program to an English major, a literature major program, just because from grade 6 to grade 12, she started her day at 7 or probably 6 in the morning, went to her tuition classes, then went to the school, did her homework, the tuition's homework, and slept at 11 o'clock in the night to get up at 5 in the next morning, again do that thing. So, I mean, I have seen so many such cases in my university and my previous roles. And I mean, those were, I mean, ironical, exceptionally. I have no words to describe the mental state of that child,
Well, I was at Ashoka, I had a kid who had actually come in to do econ, but saw that because they were at a particular school, children have been at that school, usually at a particular school for 12 plus years, right? And when they go to a university, they had children from different socioeconomic backgrounds and from different regions and from different genders. And they realized that mental health on campus, like mental health becomes a challenge as you grow older in life and becomes harder. So she switched to a psychology major from a economics major, right? So it wasn't, so can you see what I'm talking about is universities need to talk about how experience or campus life or other things beyond class also impact outcomes, right? Then we're talking about prioritize informing and fostering confidence regarding pathways and prospects of new age and unconventional career options. So just don't talk about the outcome of a business program or an engineering program. Also talk about the outcomes of a psychology program, of an art program, etc., etc. to build that confidence, right? Because we don't want to be in a world where 80% of them are engineers or anyone or are psychologists, etc. Explain the rationale behind rankings to understand better and prevent misuse, right? Or
construction. So anyways, so that I can talk about it. You know, rankings are not to be blindly followed. Though I'm coming from the university side, please understand there are multiple bodies and they have a different, everything is a different methodology of ranking. So if you think this is a #1 university, on what? #1 on what? Is it experiential learning? Is it faculty research? Is it employability? And everybody's #1. I mean, I'm very sad to see that everybody is into top rankings. Everybody is #1. Yes, rankings are good to have, but see on what criterias universities are ranked on. And when you're looking at ranking, go dive deep into it to find out on exactly what parameter has that ranking been on. You have a point, ma'am? Yep. I can.
Thanks. Just quick. I'm Jennifer Russell from Bryn Mawr College in the US. And I don't know where I heard this, but in terms of ranking, somebody made the analogy about ranking colleges or universities to appliances. So like appliances. So it's the #1 appliance. You know, like, but what does it do? Do you need it? Is, you know, like, how does it work? Does it fit in your house? You know, like, so to your point, like you have to dig deeper as to what it does. And is it for you? Do you need the washer machine or do you need the toaster? So anyway, that just really stuck
Thanks,
with me.
that's fun. Yeah. And also that in different regions, the difference between the outcomes of a top 10 university versus a top 50 versus a top 100 may not be as wide as we imagine them to be. So that's the, this thing. Quickly ending with recommendations for the advisory. If any of you know anyone in the government, please make sure this page reaches them. Because we are talking about governments regulating something around student to counselor ratio. All schools advertise that we are a 1:20 student to teacher ratio, but all those 200 kids go to one counselor. Yeah, so some recommendations on the student to counselor ratio to be prescribed to schools. So maybe that should be a part of the next education policy. I don't know if we can wait for that long. Encourage industry to support counselor training and extend opportunities to students. I used to find myself at a big loss because I was a psychology person. I could understand a lot of subjects. But when kids would talk to me about robotics and, you know, all of that, I'd be like, okay, I need to see something to know what it is. So, you know, counselor exposure to industry, if that can be supported, and then opportunities can be extended to students would be useful. Enhancing cooperation between tertiary institutions at home country and abroad. When we ask students whether they would like to go to a country outside or study in home country, we didn't show you that slide. Another option that we'd given was study in home country with the option of a semester abroad. And that percentage is rising very, very highly, very, very rapidly. So I think the whole TNE, the transnational education is something that, but again, it has to be, there have to be enough regulations for it to be a conducive and viable options for universities outside of that country. Like it has to be inviting enough, and capacity building for nurturing entrepreneurship at multiple levels to ensure sustainability and scalability of student initiatives. I think that's all we have for you. I encourage you to read the report. We've, I think, covered just 10% of the report. There's a lot more. We do have some copies here. And it's available on the IC3 Institute website. You'll see all the last 4 years reports. And please, so for example, you can use, as a counselor, you can use that back in your school to say, when we asked kids whether gender affects them or not, this is what they said. But hey, this is what counselors think, and this is what parents think. That can be a starting point of your 30-minute class of counseling in school. So happy to take on questions and any ideas or anything that you found was something you had not imagined.
I just wanted help actually from especially like we have been discussing through IC3 our training and all. It came out that we as school teachers,
Can you speak closer to them into the mic?
as school teachers, if we can get support from universities, especially in connecting concepts with the real life situation, teachers really get stuck in really finding out answers to every topic. Okay, most of the topics. Some topics which are very connected to me and I have experience, we teachers do share, but there are many areas where we find it really difficult. So how is it
I
happening?
mean,
in-
from a university side, it's a very valid suggestion. It's just that we are so overwhelmed as a university working with so many schools, so many guidance counselors. It becomes virtually difficult to be, able to provide, all the insights about everything that happens at a university level. I mean, universities are a beast in itself. You know, if school has 300 or 400 employees, universities have 1,000+ employees. You know, there are multiple departments, and the level of autonomy and the level of level of innovation is at such a level that even we recruiters find difficult, because I travel so much that I have to take actually professional development session for my university to understand what new is happening, what are the new the new pathways that are coming in, what are the new flexibilities, what is getting closed also. And then on the other side, CBSE and IBs will be changing their curriculum, and and every university has a recruitment team of 5 to 10 people. I mean, that is maximum. So it's really overwhelming, but I mean, your suggestion is very valid.
So Pavak, I just want, if she were to write you an email to
Yeah.
say that these concepts in math I'm able to relate to, who uses it, why do they use it, how is it used? I'm stuck with this, can you, and this is the part which I teach, which kids find very boring. Maybe at some point you'll be able to say, okay, you maybe not be able to get, maybe you can get a faculty to read it, not do a session, but at least respond to that, or give her a link which she can read back on.
I mean, I actually do. And I mean, a lot of universities will be able to do it. Just, I mean, I hit a forward to a faculty is like, I have a guidance counselor who's reached out with this question to me, say on human computer interaction. How does that work? I don't know. Can you just do something? And I mean, you will get a response. And a lot of university professors are very nice to respond. Not a very elaborate response, but you might find 4 or 5 very relevant links of the article where you can read yourself and do it instead of they making a PPT or a write.
So always ask.
Essay kind of a stuff. So
What
it's
is it?
possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anisha, you had a question, Lucian.
Okay. Not a question exactly. What ma'am was saying and what sir was saying, and linking what you have said right now. So we were also facing the same problem. So last year, what we did, we wrote to universities. We sent them our syllabus, all the syllabus, and how they can help us, and some topics which were really difficult for us to make student understand. So universities were very generous, and they gave us all the schedule where the difficult topics were there, and it was very much part of their university program as well. So their professor, our student went there, their university professor taught all that, and it was such a good learning for all our students, including teachers. So we can work hand in hand with universities also if we ask for the help, what Amrita ma'am was saying. Thank you.
I think we've run out of time. I've been indicating that. Yeah. So the last question, and those who are exiting, maybe just make sure you give your feedback to this amazing gentleman with a black t-shirt as volunteer. Your feedback is really valuable. So please make sure you just route yourself from that side. Last question.
Okay, I don't know if this is a question or a comment, but it's sort of trying to look at this as the opportunity behind what I think is really great research. And I'm just wondering to what extent you might have, or are there any plans for correlating this data to long-term student success? So when I see something, for example, like the percentage of counselors who have to wear all these different hats, I'm wondering how you make change happen to give those counselors more time to the parents and more time to the students, more time to the process. I think the only way to get there is to say, hey, when you have counselors who are 100% devoted, here's some measures of success for those students, especially in a long-term sense. And I think that's the opportunity in this room between counselors and universities, especially because the universities can see what happens when the students matriculate on. how did they get there through this process? And then to be able to recycle that back into making change in schools. Just anecdotally, we did a research report on our class of 2017 that concluded last year. So we researched about 300 students who graduated from our schools, and we looked at trying to find some long-term international student success metrics that I don't think really exist in the world. Is there something that we can share globally in terms of student success long-term? Just a quick point on this is that we found that, and we think this correlates back to our counseling process, we're really encouraged that 95% of our class of 2017 finished at the university they matriculated to. And I'm not sure that a lot of data like that is out there. And if we can start linking the work that you're doing here to that kind of success, then I think you find some real value. I just wonder if there's anything like that for you in terms of long-term success metrics.
So thank you for that question, Lucian. When we asked the students this year, had they done the student quest last year, I think 60% of the population was new. So because we are an outside organization, you're in a school, you have control over the student, over the population, we don't. So I'm doing the survey with the IC3 network. Some will respond, some will not respond, some new will come in, some will exit, etc. So the population is not the constant this thing. So I don't know whether we can do longitudinal. What we are doing within the survey is that some parts of the survey we are retaining over the years. So for example, what are the top, when you're looking at a university, what are the top factors? So that's in all the surveys. So, and you'll see how that has moved up and down. That's one. The intent is to do some long-term research, but because we are also surveying minors who are not 18, we can't take their contact information, right? So that's the other issue, but so I don't have an immediate answer, but we are now at a point where we are thinking about consolidating our research function at the IC3 Institute to ensure that we don't only have an annual survey, which is surveying a different population every year, but maybe draw a smaller sample and convert that to a longitudinal this thing. And we're sort of improvising every year. So this was the first year. We also had a focus group after this, with the counselors to say, these are the findings. What do you think could be potential reasons for these findings, right? So when we talk about the level of influence that parents have on students, these students reported having freedom on career choice and course choice, lesser freedom on country and college choice. And the focus group said that that could be because there is finance involved in that. Right? So, and that goes back to the study we did last year, which said that most of the parents don't discuss or share openly the financial budgets with their kids. So we could sort of connect dots between this thing, but the population is not the same. So it's not true. It's not longitudinal.
Idea out of your conversation. So I don't know whether that's feasible or not, but maybe if you can connect with the alumni of the schools and survey them and have them, and they go backwards and then they reflect, maybe you get some answers there.
Last year we did do a comparison of students with counselors. So we asked a question on how do you feel about decision making? We wanted to capture the emotions, not just the factors. And the top two emotions that came up were excitement and anxiety. And it was equal for both students with counselors versus without counselors. So that was something that we did. We haven't done a comparison of with or without counselors.
I think we've absolutely run out of time.
Happy to stay back.
Yeah, I mean, we can stay back, but thank you very much, everybody, for joining.